Hey guys, Darren Dale. I am here in McCook, Nebraska with my friend John Odea. John, thanks for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad for the opportunity.
John has been a huge advocate for agriculture, rural America, and things like that. We're going to discuss a few things. John is a true visionary, in my opinion, of watching the world. When everyone else was playing checkers, John Odea was playing chess. John, tell us a little bit about the businesses that you and your family have.
Oh, we run several different revenue streams. Basically, I'm just a cow trader. That's how I started out. That's what I always wanted to do, is feed cattle and trade cattle. My youngest son is in the seed stock business, and he and my oldest son, they started as an FFA project. They showed a lot of cattle all over, and they started buying young heifer calves or recently, backgrounded heifers, and developing them and selling bred heifers.
Okay.
Then we'd always sold a few butcher beef and everything along, and then they figured out they kept adding value and adding different tiers to their heifer program, and they built it to custom cattle. Okay. They figured out their customer base was small producers that didn't want to get up and check 6 heifers all night. Sure. For 2 weeks or a month. So they would go in and they would make deals with these guys, say, okay, we'll take these, you buy these heifers, you pay for them in the fall, you come get pairs in the spring. And they built that deal up. And now my older son, he still does all of our ranch maintenance, builds pens for us and everything. And then he goes and has a welding business and manufactures basically farmer feedlot type equipment, corral systems, and does all the work in-house, and then does a lot of farm equipment repair, and works for outfits that I really respect, like the Daffer family down at Danbury. Does a lot of work for timbermen, and then he's been all over the country. He's went out and built a lot of corrals for Vision Angus, and been to the Rothwell Ranch up at Hyannis, and he's carved him out a niche. He does the stuff that other people don't want to do, and that's what we focused on, is we do the kind of work that other people don't want to do. We still put up little square bales of hay. We put up a few thousand ton of hay every year, and
isn't that the entrepreneur spirit?
You've got
John is an entrepreneur extreme. He's telling you the tools. It's entrepreneurship at its greatest.
Yeah. You pick out what they don't want to do. I mean, in the wintertime when things are slow, my oldest, he'll go out with his skid loader and cleans pens and does a lot of this work for horse outfits and acreage type people.
Sure.
Cleaning pens and demo work and things like that, where he'll go in and do a $500 job in an afternoon that the big earth movers, it's a headache for them to mess with, and they don't have small enough equipment to make it work.
Sure.
My dad 40 years ago started a salvage grain business when he ran a lot of hogs. And so part of our cattle feeding program is we bid on corn screenings, and we go in and buy a lot of damaged grain and add value to it through our fat cattle business. And so we attack it in a lot of different ways on our beef business, because I can't out-compete the big outfits that are connected up.
Sure.
I don't want to play their game.
Right.
And so we sell them our steer calves, and we feed out our heifers that don't make the cut for the breeding program. Okay. That's simply put. I mean, we try to add value to every animal that leaves, every bale of hay that leaves. If it's a commodity, we're gonna keep it. If hay's cheap, we keep it in the stackyard and wait for a better day, and we feed the hay, the commodity hay, ourselves. But we sell a few thousand bales of horse quality and pet quality hay, I call it.
Sure.
Every year.
There's a need for that, and the way agriculture is changing, there's the niche market that is wide open.
Yeah, there's huge gaps.
Perfect. Hey, this is real. This is what you get with Darren and John. Everything is real.
There's huge gaps in this business in ag right now, because the 8, 10, 12, 20,000 acre guys, they don't want to do these things. And there's high profit margin in some of these deals. I just don't want somebody else doing it in my backyard, of course.
Sure.
But we started out, our beef business is really kind of the crown jewel for me.
Okay.
Because we started out doing 6 to 10 beef a year for several years. And then we went to 25. And we thought, boy, if we could ever get to where we sell 50.
Okay.
Boy, that'd be all right. COVID hit and we bounced to 100 in 1 year.
Sure.
And we did over 200 beef direct to consumer a couple of years. And that got beyond our comfort level because we were in a constant hunt for customers.
Sure.
Just for our population area and for the way our business model is. 140 to 170 beef a year is really our sweet spot.
Okay.
What we can manage, because it really starts to turn into a full-time job.
Trying to recruit and get those customers in.
Yep, keep a customer, recruit a customer, keep a customer. Ignoring the noise.
Sure.
Because there's lots of people. I know my customer, I know what we can make as far as what kind of beef we can make. Everybody's out there, everybody gets their chest puffed up and says, boy, I want to sell to a front end steakhouse and I want to sell this premium deal to the, want to do the shipping. And
sure,
we've never shipped a pound of beef. The lion's share of our beef sells within an hour of our feedlot.
And you're selling it by the pound, by the half beef, by the cut?
Yes. And then we do a bundle program.
Sure.
We do a Friday night. We call it our meetup. Every Friday night, McCook, we come to McCook and set up, and people pre-order, and everybody comes by, and we do that. And then we have a little bit of surplus to where somebody just sees us or somebody just wants to come by and get a few pounds of hamburger, they can. But we've ignored the restaurants. We tried to get in with the restaurants early on, and no offense to those people, but their margins are so tight.
Sure.
That they can't pay a premium. Our sweet spot are the customers that consume 75 to 120 pounds of beef per person in their household every year. I say my people are really conservative, really savvy. My customers, they recognize value versus price.
Sure. They're getting that. They're getting it.
They want to get a value. They take a lot of pride in buying a $15 a pound ribeye from me that they like and that they can cook correctly.
Sure.
Versus rolling the dice on what they're going to find at the grocery store. And they will not. My customers will not go to a restaurant and give $60 for a steak dinner.
Sure.
I like to talk to these people and they say, going out for a steak is kind of a chore for us. We'd rather stay home. Says, most of my guys are construction workers, co-op guys, truck drivers. When they're home, they want to be home. They want to have a couple beers on the deck while their steak cooks, or they want to come home to a nice meal that they put in the crock pot that morning or the night before, or that their wife has made for them. They get it. That's what they do. And
is that not the backbone of America?
Yeah, it's real people. That's what I always like to use the old Tommy Boy quote, the old Ray Zalewski, Ohio, the Midwest Auto Parts King,
Yes.
I always say, I make beef for the working man because that's what I am, and that's my key, because what I learned, the world needs rich people, but rich people don't cook their own steak.
No.
Yeah, you might sell a package of ribeyes that somebody sends to somebody as a gift.
Yeah.
Or do something like that. But the guy that's making $200K plus a year, he wants to go out and he wants to, have a fancy bottle of wine or a top shelf whiskey with his steak that he's going to pay too much for.
Right.
It's all part of his experience
for
the week. And I said, I'm not going to pursue those people. And it's fun.
The time John has put in to do this, I've known John for a lot of years. He's dealing with real people. And to get America back to where we need to go, we need to support John, get his product. But he's taking care of the people that are doing the pulling the weight of the world, and it's rewarding as all get out.
Yeah.
It really is.
One of my favorite things is I've got a group of guys that are started out as Facebook friends, and became real friends.
Okay.
And they're from all over the country. And they will send me messages throughout the year that say, hey, a check is coming.
Yeah.
I've got local people that do it. And then we started kind of a fun little fund. A lot of our people tip us, on deliveries and things like that, and throw a little extra. Well, all of our tip money goes into a charity fund. And these checks come in from all over the country. And they say, do what you think you need to do.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so it's enabled us to, one of our big deals is at Christmas time, our Southwest Public Schools does a lot of holiday bundles for different families. I think last year we did 50-some beef roasts for that deal.
That's awesome.
And then we can turn around, and if we've got somebody that's struggling that we know has some hard luck, well, then we can get them 40, 50 pounds of hamburger to make sure that the kids are going to get protein for several weeks. And things, we just do that, and it's amazing how people remember those things, and they come back and you see them given someplace else in the community later on.
That it's passing it forward. And after the last few years, I had a health run. Things like that are more important than hitting the lottery.
Yeah.
And when somebody's down and you can pick them up, and nothing picks you up like beef.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Beef is high in protein. I always think of my granddad, Ed Bramwell. He always said, one of 14 in a logging camp, he said, I ate pinto beans for 8 years. I still like them. I eat them now. And that's the people that will help us get agriculture back to the way we've seen it. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with John Odea. And today's segment is You're Only as Good as How You Reinvent Yourself.
If real stories and real people move you, follow a winning podcast on Spotify. Authentic voices, meaningful conversations, all right here. Tap follow to stay updated with every new episode.
Hey everybody, we're back with John Odea. We're talking about entrepreneurship, business. John's one of the greatest reinventors I've ever seen. I've known him through a few different things. And on my reinvention, doing the podcast, John was one of the first ones that came to my mind. And when I said, hey, John, can we get together? It was, yes, let's do it today. Let's do it. And so that kind of entrepreneur and winning attitude is contagious. John, what's your thoughts about you're only as good as how you reinvent yourself?
Boy, there's no truer words because, what set us on the path on doing the beef business and what set the boys on the heifer business and on the welding businesses and as Jake moves ahead with the seed stock business, I mean, he's a seed stock multiplier for other outfits now. And what set us on that deal is I would say I've failed more than most people have tried.
Right.
Some of you guys might be old enough to remember in the 90s when the hog market crashed. I graduated from high school, was in the hog business, was feeding cattle. Would have been better off. I laugh about it. One day down here at the West Sale Barn, Les Horn and I bought every feeder pig that was there. I bought 200 and he bought 400.
Okay.
6 months later, Les and I were comparing notes, and he said, kid, he said we should have shot every pig that was in the sale that day. He said we'd have both been better off. We lost. We did not recoup all of it. That was right on the precipice of the crash. And we'd have been better off if the pigs would have all died because they didn't bring back their feed plus their original cost. The original cost of the pigs was the cheapest thing there. And so by the time I was 21, I was way upside down. And I'd been riding pins and doing some cowboying and some farming for other people, trying to get things built back up. And I went to the oil fields.
Okay.
And, I worked for some great outfits in the oil fields. I worked for, in high school, junior high, I worked for Norm Timmerman. And Norm became like an extra uncle to me. In fact, I was closer to Norm than I was any of my uncles growing up. And up until a few months before Norm's passing, he'd stop while I was choring and visit with me, and we'd talk about the business and life and everything. And
Norm was a true 1%er. If you got to know him, it was a treat. He had a goal and he was going to it. And if you fall down, he'd pick you up.
Yeah.
And I did a few benefit auctions where Norm just wrote the big checks that nobody knew.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't be uncommon norm to push on everybody all night in a benefit.
Yes.
And then just add 5,000 to the ticket at the end of the night.
Yes, or 10.
Yes.
And he didn't want people to know that he threw those big checks in. Darren, I'll put another 5,000 in if you don't tell him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Norm had, when I was working for Norm, I was 13 years old. First time I went to work with Norm, and we went and scooped cattle guards.
Okay.
You know, there was, at that time, one of the guys, I mean, his family was a top 5 cattle feeder at that time, before the corporates really took hold.
Sure.
And here he was, hand digging cattle guards out right beside a 13-year-old kid.
Right.
You know, and we, you know, drinking Pepsis and eating a bag of Cheetos for lunch, and then get right back at it and scooping tanks. And then, of course, Norm had his Kristen Timmerman, is Kristen Stagemeyer now. I went all through school with her, and then JT, who now runs the runs the NAT cattle feeding entity.
Okay.
He's the head man there and oversees several yards and lives just down the road from me. You know, grew up amongst them people, and they was just the same as all the rest of us. And,
Sure.
And it taught me a lot. Well, okay, fast forward back here when I went to the oil fields. And of course, I've always been a really big reader, and I'd be sitting there loading salt water, and I'd be reading Alan Greenspan.
Okay.
I'd be reading Warren Buffett reports and things like that.
You were pushing yourself mentally.
Yeah. I read Tom Osborne, you know, and he said you need to be a lifelong learner, and that really stuck with me. I learned a lot after school was over than I did in school.
I got to write that down. A lifelong learner. Some of these things are for me too. You've got to continue to want to learn. I love that.
But one of the things in Alan Greenspan's book that I took away from it was creative destruction.
Okay.
He said, what you do, he says, you look at the companies that have stood the test of time for 50, 80, 100 years. He said, he compared at that time Texas Instruments and IBM.
Okay.
He said, IBM adapted and took on computers.
Sure.
Texas Instruments kept making calculators.
Ooh.
They didn't adopt. They didn't change. In my lifetime, I look at Sears.
Right.
Sears started out as a mail order.
Sure.
And then built into retail businesses and everything. Then they decided they wanted to build brick and mortar so they could be like J.C. Penney and be like Woolworths. And,
Sure.
you know, we'd have never heard of Amazon if Sears would have stayed with their, what worked. If they would have adopted, I mean, their brick and mortar stores were great, but then they fought the internet.
Right. And they had it.
They had it. They had people. They
had that book.
They still had people on the team that knew how to manage it. They still had all the warehouses. They had all the infrastructure clear across the country. We'd have never heard of Jeff Bezos if they'd have been an early adopter
Sure.
of the technology it was presented. But they wouldn't knock some segments in the head. They wouldn't kill some segments to keep other segments going.
That true entrepreneur spirit wasn't there. The
Right.
risk takers. You got to be able to take a risk.
Yeah. Well, these wildcatters, if a well wasn't making money, well, let's plug it. Let's pull the equipment there, and let's go drill us another one.
Sure.
If a field is kind of bad, well, okay. Well, we got this well here. Well, let's sell it for a municipal disposal well and make it work for them.
Right.
And then we're going to go over here and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And a lot of those guys that were in the oil field, they'd say, well, this oil deal ain't the best. Well, let's take some of our dividend money and let's go over here and buy a strip mall and let's do this and let's do that.
Sure.
And so I learned, okay, well, maybe I could take some of this and I'll buy a rental house or I'll buy some distressed properties, and we did some of that. And then we started trading some equipment and doing some things like that. And before long, we built up a different business and had different revenue streams. And then we bought some land. Michelle and I bought some land and traded some land. Then when my folks wanted to retire, we bought from them at appraised value because they had to have it. I mean, they put it together in the 70s and almost lost it in the 80s. And I mean, like so many farm families that there couldn't be no deals made because
It wasn't an option.
there wasn't an option.
There wasn't an opportunity there, and there wasn't an option. And
Yeah, the only reason we bought our ground was because we could get enough better interest rate than what my dad did he had to have a high enough rent to keep it.
sure.
That he didn't have any money. So, it was all going to the bank and going to taxes. Well, we could get enough better interest rate so we could buy it ourselves for virtually the same dollars as what it was costing us in rent to my folks. So that's what we did. And so then we just kind of kept building our deal up. And so we just had to reinvent. Got our numbers really built up good. And then the late 2015 cattle crash took us out.
Right.
Didn't quite lose 7 figures, but lost in the big 6 figures.
Was that not their idea to put a bubble in there to push a lot of people out?
I think it was it brought the hammer on a lot of farmer feeders.
Sure.
And it was a total 180 because Cattlefax will never tell you this.
Right.
Cattlefax and drovers and everybody was saying, in the spring of 2015 and late 14, this calf market will stay great. We've got at least one more, probably 2 more years.
Yeah.
Before the wave hits us, before we see this expansion. And then we just woke up one morning and the cattle just started sliding and it snowballed.
It just didn't stop.
And it just didn't stop. So
The information source then is the same as now, besides what we're doing. It's print and media.
Yeah.
There's one company that owns all of the ag news and advertising.
Yeah. And so we had to change directions again.
Yeah.
And we adopted the old axiom that we're going to do twice as good with half as many.
Okay.
We downsized our cow herd. We quit buying near as many of the really rough cattle.
Sure.
That was one of our big deals was we upgraded undervalued cattle.
Okay.
And we did a lot of that. Did a lot of old cattle work. But the deal just we had to change. We had to do some things, and it worked. We started pulling ourselves really out of the hole, and then spring of 2019 hit. The 2018-2019 winter and spring took a toll on us.
Sure.
And then right on the backside of that, we had COVID, and that shut down a lot of markets for us and made things really
But
tough.
you reinvented yourself in that time period, because next thing I know, I'm watching, like everybody, watching social media, and here's John. Here's John every day. Everyone wonders, Darren, what's the key to social media? Ask John Odea. It's doing like Keith Maddox said, tell your story, tell it perfect, and tell it again. And you're so good at that.
Coca-Cola is a prime example.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what Coca-Cola is.
Yes.
There isn't a city on the planet where they don't have access to Coca-Cola.
Right.
And they still have a huge advertising budget because they got to remind people that they're there.
Yes.
Every day you got to tell them you're there.
Right.
And that's what we did. We, kept pushing it, and it's been really great for us. And I realize what I've done, and not to sound like a bragger, but I don't have anybody on my team in my family, daughter-in-laws or sons or my wife or anybody that can do what I've done.
No, not very many people can.
And so my beef business, I call it my Alamo.
Sure.
I'm gonna take my beef business clear to the end. This is where I'm gonna fight my battle.
Yeah.
In production agriculture is right here. And while I'm fighting here, Jake and John G and Catherine and Caden and Michelle, they can all be doing their own thing, the things that they can do that I can't do.
Right.
They're my Sam Houstons.
I got you.
They're gathering all the resources,
Yeah.
and they're gonna. So when my Alamo falls, The morning that I assume room temperature, when my Alamo falls, they've got the resources to where they can do the livestock equipment business, the livestock construction, feed yard construction. They can do the hay business will be a standalone business, and the heifer business and the bulls and everything. I'm freeing up this resources, saying, okay, we're gonna get the bills paid doing this.
Sure.
But we're not going to pull somebody away from these other things and say that this is gonna be what we do for 100 years. There will come a time when there will have to be a creative destruction on this side.
But your kids, this is what I am impressed about, and everybody should be looking this way. The more tools you can put in a kid's toolbox, when you come to these adverse situations, your toolbox was full. You could adapt and go. Yeah. And your boys with all their skills, like the welding skill in its own, the years of 4-year colleges, I didn't go to one. I had to pay my own school, but there's no need for it. And if you want to achieve and go, your group is a testament on how having a trade and having your toolbox is full. Next thing you know, you got Fatty McGill's.
Yeah.
You got Fatty McGill's. We haven't even touched on that. John does Fatty McGill's as a caterer. He can cater events, different shows, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and that's what one of the things that we started out with. You mentioned the boys. They were little, and they'd mess with the bucket calves, you know.
Okay.
And my dad was a bucket calf guy and did all this. Well, our deal launched. I had a fella that had bought a bunch of hay, a Darren that bought some hay, and didn't have money to pay me.
Okay.
So we started taking payment as bull calves.
Okay.
The boys had a couple of yearlings that they'd sold, and they traded some cattle, and we're talking, these were little boys. They were 4 and 7 when we started the Holstein business.
Okay, that's pre-junior high.
Yeah, yeah. Jake was getting on he was a preschooler.
Okay.
I mean, he's 4 years old, G is 7, and we were feeding 80 to 100 Holsteins every morning and every night. They'd get home from school, they'd get off the school bus, and they would clean stalls, refill the grain feeders, say what needed doctored, and then when I come in from the oil patch, I'd doctor calves, and then we'd mix milk in with a paint mixer on a drill.
Sure.
And we weighed the milk and everything, and we didn't do it 1 cup at a time. We had a hanging scale, and we pour the milk into the mixed buckets. And I don't know how many radio flyers wagons that Jake wore out, hauling milk buckets across the road to where we had our calves at. And then eventually the Holstein, we figured out where we could source them, and we kept building that deal up. And that's what bought the boys' first set of breeding heifers.
Okay.
Was their Holstein money, their share of their Holstein money. And Jake, for years, he always said, man, I hope we're never so broke we got to feed Holsteins again.
That's gold. That's gold.
And so every once in a while from the beef business, I'll buy a Holstein to make into hamburger, and they say, we ain't that broke yet.
We're not there.
We're not there.
But you can see it, and you knew where it was, and that's what puts that grit in John's stomach and in his mind, and I think we can all learn from it. I do. You just got to persevere through it.
And you mentioned Fatty McGill's.
Yes.
And that was 100% Jake's brainchild.
Okay.
I would say I'm probably a top 10 cook in Red Willow County.
Okay.
And I'm a distant 3rd best in my house.
Okay.
But Jake always kind of had a passion for food, liked to create, real creative. Both my sons are really creative. And Michelle's an excellent cook. And we were washing steers when Exarban was still in Omaha.
Okay.
And we're standing there washing, and Jake's watching the food trucks.
Sure.
And he looks up at the wall at the big clock, and he looks back at that food truck, and he's still washing. And I see him just staring at that food truck. I said, hey, move your ass, Junior, and just think the only thing we got to do all day. He said, He said, what's it probably costing at that time? It's, I don't know, probably $8 a plate for each one of them people moving there. He said, do you realize, he says, right now here at the lunch rush, they're moving 4 plates a minute.
Okay.
I said, I said, that ain't so bad. He said, he said, that beats about anything in agriculture.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, this kid's 11 years old and he's figured this out as we're washing steers. Well, we talked about it as we're driving home. Long story short, a month later, we're taking one of the show trailers, the older show trailer, and trading it in on an enclosed trailer to launch into this catering business. And so we'd go out and we'd set up and we'd do. And then Michelle got the Sale Barn Cafe at Tri-State then and ran that for a few years. And it was really fun the way the businesses stack and segue into each other.
Sure.
We started out the retail beef business. We realized we could sell steaks better retail than what we could through the catering business.
Okay.
So we started doing that, and we just kept moving. Well, it was fun. How many people would say, "Well, boy, can we get some of this?" Well, yeah, sure. Here, give me a call.
Yeah.
And we can get you a half a beef. We can get you a hamburger. You can make this good a hamburger at home, and you can do this and do that. Jake has since pared the catering deal back to where he does about 6 or 8 events a year and a handful of weddings. And he refuses, he will not bid a wedding.
Okay.
He says, we're a known quantity. If you want us to do our wedding, do your wedding, we'll come do your wedding. This is what it's going to cost.
Sure.
You're going to let me know today, and there's going to be no changes. There's going to be no dinking around.
Right.
We're not going to bid, and you're not going to tell me in 2 weeks. But we've done this enough. We know what it costs. We know what we're doing. If you want to have Aunt Effie do it,
right,
fine, go have her do it. But we're not going to be second guessed. We're not going to be jerked around.
That's the beauty of getting to that position and looking at it through the right lenses. You're giving that customer the best service.
Yes.
And sometimes, we hate to say it, not everybody wants the best service, but when you're straightforward like that from the get-go, they know what they're going to get. And it helps you guys position for the rest of the year too.
Yeah, and I laughed about it at the time. Jake was 8, 9, 10 years old, just reading good.
Okay.
And we laughed about it because I raised those boys in a truck. I did a lot of harvest hauling for friends as I started to wean myself out of the oil fields. I did a lot of bought a truck and we hauled. Well, still got families that we haul for every year, and I'd say my only customers on the truck, but we trade things out, and they're like family to us. And well, those boys are riding the bunk. Well, what do they find? But they find an Alan Greenspan book back there, The Age of Turbulence.
Okay.
And so Jake had flipped through there and a couple of Rush Limbaugh books.
Sure.
That were sitting back there, and they just pick it up and they'd read a chapter or two.
Not their phones.
Not their phones. No.
They're not on their phones. They're not on their phones.
So we're coming home from a catering one day.
Okay.
Jake says, it's really neat. He says, very few people see the correlation between value and price.
Sure.
He said everybody's a price shopper.
Yes.
But he says so many people aren't value shoppers. He said they're not parallel on the spectrum, I think was the words he says. He said where value and price meet with the willing consumer.
Sure.
Is where you really create something. And so we visited about it.
How old was he when he started thinking that way?
10.
That's wonderful. That's positioning.
And so we'd sit there, and then, like I said, it wasn't about a year and a half later, we went big time into the catering business and started doing the food truck.
Sure.
At that time, we were doing, small deals. If somebody called and wanted us to help out with something, or we'd help other people, and then we bought the food truck, and he'd do, I think our biggest year we did 70-some setups between the sale barn and the food truck and everything.
I saw you a few times up at Sci-Techers up the creek.
Oh, yeah.
Up the
Yeah.
creek's a great place. You're up there a few times.
Yeah, and Jake calls it his hillbilly hibachi
Okay.
deal because he'll have his flat tops out there, and his goal when we set up, like in a town festival, is to do 100 sandwiches an hour by himself.
Okay.
That's the goal. I should say by himself, as long as he's got somebody hauling buns to him and taking money,
Yes.
and then they can crank 100 sandwiches an hour, and they're all made fresh.
Wow.
Making cheesesteaks and making cheeseburgers, and with the exception is we do a sliced prime rib.
Okay.
And so that's the only thing that isn't cooked right there in front of you. And so,
I've been watching this, and then people always say, well, Fatty's is already out of food. Well, it's positioning, and it's set up. It's just like some restaurants I've gone to that only seat so many plates, so they know for that night what their count is. And it's business management. I saw it, and I knew what you were doing, and I'm going, these guys, and this is what I wrote down about John. John has been playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers.
you create scarcity in the marketplace.
Yes. Yes.
You
Create scarcity. Yes, that's it.
But
Yes.
I mean, it's been done to all of us in production ag
Yes.
forever. I mean, boy, we're going to be short on seed. Order your seed early.
Yeah.
We're going to be, fertilizer's going to be short. Don't mind the price, just get it.
Right.
Well,
Create that urgency.
you got to create urgency, and it's the worst thing when you've got a food business or catering business is shrink.
Sure.
You can't. Okay, it's way better for me to have 10 people that don't get a sandwich at the end of the day than what it is for me to prep for another 50 and sit there for an hour
Sure.
waiting to sell those last 10 sandwiches and then scratching my head wondering what I'm going to do with the product for the other 40. Then all of that product takes you. If you've got a food business like that, if you don't sell out, you're not profitable that day.
Right.
Your shrink just destroys you. Now, if you've got a brick and mortar to where you can
Save it, reuse it.
where you can roll that shrink into the next day, you're all right. But yeah,
You want to hit that point in any business. You want to be to where you're capping out, and I had a guy, Con Kimple, that taught business math. He owned a Purina dealership. It's business math.
Yeah.
And when it's your own money, you're there. We're going to come back and close it out with one final segment with John Odea. Hey guys, we're here with John for the third segment on our show. We've been talking about all sorts of stuff, and John's a traveler like I am, and my question for him is, I'm looking around, how do we reincorporate our small towns, get the small town atmosphere, and get more people, and get us out of that below the poverty income in our small towns?
and that's something that's really, really vital to me because I want to have a nice place. I had a nice place to raise my kids. I want my kids to have a nice place to raise their kids.
Yes.
We can't go out and do the same things that everybody else is doing.
Right.
We can't say we're going to be the next this or the next that. No, we're going to be us. We've got to have great schools. We've got to have great internet access.
Yes.
For these folks that want to work from home.
Yes.
That allows us to have healthcare, accessible healthcare.
Yes.
And not just the physical, but also mental health care. We've got a mental health crisis in this country as a whole. And we need more, especially in western Nebraska, rural areas, we need more mental health professionals. All these things go into there, but we've got to be able to pay them. We've got to be able to do it. And so that's where, I'm not saying our program is the end all, but our beef program, we're keeping as many dollars in rural.
It stays back.
It stays here. Every processing dollar that I spend goes to pay wages and goes to another entrepreneur in a small town.
Yes.
Every tank of gas I buy is bought from a local vendor.
It's that buying power that you have to be conscious of every second. If it's got a DG on it, don't go.
Yeah. We people, back to the value versus cost comparison. Our value has got to be realized, and the only way we do that is by educating our people that we've got here.
Yes.
That this is, there's more value than just the dollar in what we're doing.
Right.
I've seen a lot of it since the cattle market has moved in the last 18 months.
Right.
And I called it. I told people, I said, there's going to be a lot of guys that are in the butcher beef business that are going to leave the butcher beef business. Right. The butcher beef business, the retail, the direct to consumer, when the commodity price is up, it's not much fun.
Right. Because
when the commodity goes up, the middleman margin, the retail margin shrinks.
Sure.
Retail charges you all you're willing to pay all the time. It doesn't matter what it costs Walmart to buy lean trim has very little to do with what they charge for hamburger.
Right.
Walmart charges what they can sell it before they can smell it. That's their goal. Is we are going to charge the maximum we can to move it. And one of those ways we do it is by being that much cheaper than the mom and pop.
Right.
Until the
margin.
Until the mom and pop is gone, and then we can charge whatever we want to. Yeah, I mean, you would think that every Walmart would have the same price on hamburger. It's all coming out of the same packing houses.
Right.
They're all relatively close.
Sure.
And no, you'll see. I guarantee you, there's price differences between North Platte and McCook Walmarts right now on hamburger and steak and everything.
Some of that they are possibly or probably getting from Brazil.
Oh yes.
Like a lot of that meat that you're eating there is Brazilian beef.
Like the grass-fed deal, and I have nothing against grass-fed beef. It's if you're into grass-fed, so be it. But let's be honest, if you're not buying grass-fed beef direct from a producer, odds are that's imported product. 80% of the grass-fed beef, 80%, not 8%, 80% of the grass-fed beef that goes through traditional grocery store channels is imported in this country.
Right.
Because those countries have cheaper land, they have cheaper labor and fewer regulations, and so they can beat us all day long on commodity production. Now, where we have an advantage is on grain-fed beef because in those countries they feed grain to people.
Right.
Here we put it through animals.
Sure.
And so those things, that changes, but back to our developing these communities, it's a lot of things that got to move a little bit.
Buying power.
It's got to make it a little bit better. We've got to there's no magic bullet out there that's gonna change it overnight.
Right.
Right now, I mean, we're seeing as the energy business in Southwest Nebraska has plateaued and is going the other way. There's a lot of that equity that is left. Completely left our area. There isn't the money being spent like there was once upon a time. And you don't want to be the cheap labor source.
No.
That's why manufacturing has come to Red Willow County in the past, is because labor was cheaper here than it was in the Omaha, Fremont area.
Yeah, you get closer to the river.
Yeah. And so that's, but we've got to embrace the niche that really gets overlooked is being the guy, being the business that the other guys depend on.
Sure.
And I think that's where these young entrepreneurs need to build and need to do is you're not going to be able to wrestle a quarter away from the 10,000 acre guy.
Right.
But I bet that 10,000 acre guy would really like to have another guy he knew that would show up at harvest time
Right.
and would bring his own truck and take care of his own truck. And I see guys that are doing well, 1 and 2 truck fleets that are doing those things. I see the guys that are building fence. When I was a kid in high school, that was a high schooler job. You found your 2 or 3 guys that you went out and worked for.
Sure.
And you built pasture fence every spring.
Right.
You know, and that was your deal, until the haying started.
Right.
But this time of year, you built pasture fence every weekend, and then once school was out, you could go ditch corn and lay out pipe and then get to haying.
Right.
Those things all took place, but there's countless numbers of those deals. I mean, the labor is short for those bigger outfits.
Right.
There's opportunities.
You got that toolbox full.
You've got that toolbox. If you can drive a truck and if you can weld.
Yes.
There's somebody that has got work for you to do.
And that truck driving is what I've seen in the last few years, quite a few years. That's where the profitability is. Some of our good friends up north, they say, Darren, we're losing it or barely breaking even, but the trucking is where we're making it.
Yeah, and you'll see that. I mean, and it's the key is to be able to have good people that you can trust, and good people that know the commodity that you're hauling.
Right.
A grain hauler can't haul fat cattle for the most part. It takes a special guy that grew up doing it.
Yes.
You can't just make anybody a cattle hauler.
Right.
You can't just there's certain things but it's neat in our communities when you see how many of those trucks roll in. And they're raising their family here.
Yes.
And they're doing all these things here. And
look over to Binkelman. It's I'm out of the picture. I'm still a rookie on this, guys, so bear with me. But I think about Boone's over in Binkelman.
Yeah.
They go from a father-son to now there's a grandson, and they're part of the community. And that's how you get more people into our small towns.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon is not going to build an order fulfillment center in Indianola.
Right.
They ain't coming, folks.
No.
They're not going to build it in McCook.
No.
I mean,
They built them all in Fort Worth. If you drive through Fort Worth, like every open lot a few years ago is Amazon.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. They're not coming this way. And I look at John and I here. I'm really proud of both of us. We've created businesses in this area for ourselves that help other people, and that's how you get more people back in. And John has touched on it a couple times. It's our buying power. No matter how big or small you are, your buying power is huge. When you make a conscious effort to make it local, that's where the metamorphosis changes.
Yeah, and we're sitting right here in a building shooting this.
Yeah.
Where our family has decided this is where we're going to buy all of our equipment.
Yeah.
We bought tractors here, balers here, and all these things because we realize that these are the same people that are doing business, that are building things in our community. This store is not.
Tell them where we're at.
We're at Heartland, New Holland here.
Yes, we're here at Heartland,
and it's one of the few standalone. It's part of the modern farm equipment family, which is I think got 4 stores total.
Right.
Which is truly, in the new farm equipment business, is truly mom and pop in the modern era.
It's the only one I know. My friend Les Hopkins lost his a few years ago, and we all know people that did. This is it.
Yeah.
And this is fun to be in here. Tell them what we're doing. They just open the conference room for us and say, come on in.
Yeah, and it's great. In fact, I get to go 2 doors down and sign paperwork on a tractor that the boys are getting set up for us right now. And that's what's fun is we've got these guys that, we see them every day and we see them at worship on Sunday.
Yes.
And we're home. I don't think people realize the value, and that's something I don't know is necessarily selling it to the rest of the world is the right word, but showing it to the rest of the world is how you can make these communities home.
Yeah.
You feel joined with this community because you can do and you can provide for each other and the people care and that's the only way we're going to hold this together and change. And it takes an essential attitude change I mean, I imagine it was the same for you as it was for me growing up. The only thing anybody could tell us in the 90s was you need to get out of here.
You got to see things.
Yeah. You know, boy, you got to, I mean, we were told, go someplace else and make money.
Right.
And maybe someday you can come back. Well, yeah. And I know a lot of people that have left and come back.
This is where you want to be.
And this is where you want to be.
This is where you want to be. I've traveled, you've traveled. It's not, I get out of the picture. We're not in Dallas. We're not in Fort Worth. You know people in the grocery store. That's why this is a wonderful place. And if you're in the BW telecom area, you've had 5G fiber for quite a few years.
Yeah. When Michelle and I started dating, she's from Plattsmouth.
Okay.
And she didn't realize what it was like. I mean, we'd go out to eat, and people would be visiting and everything. And we go to the car, says, what the hell, you know?
Yeah.
She said, did you know all them? I said, you know, there'd be 75 or 80 people in there. I'd say, well, those were people I considered friends that stopped and talked. I knew everybody in that building.
Right.
I mean, we met.
Yes.
And it just blew her away, you know, and then we might show up at Winkleman, and there'd be 30 or 40 people at something up there, and I'd know 25 of them.
Sure.
You know, and she just couldn't, she said, she was born and raised in a community that, you know, you had 6 or 8 people.
Right.
A few neighbors that you knew and everything, but I guarantee you, those of us in these communities in this size, we actually know and have a feel for far more people than what the people that are raising families in the city. You just make a connection. When you go through school with the same 15 or 20 people.
Yes.
I mean, when you spend 180 days a year, you know, 8 to 10 hours a day.
Right.
I mean, and then you have a connection with those people for a long time with the families. I mean, it didn't matter whose mom or dad it was. If they told you to straighten up, you straightened up.
Yes. And it gets to that bi-generational where the community has helped raising kids. And in this day and age, it's tough with kids. It's tough to raise kids. And if someone is giving them a little turn here and there, which you get in a small community, and you don't get a big one, that's why you want to be here.
Yeah, and we laughed about it. My son was on a really good relay team his senior year, and we laughed because the grandpas, to them, I mean, all of us dads knew each other on the relay team and had kind of grown up together. Well, all the grandpas knew each other, you know. And it was kind of like, you know, and they weren't all families that had been raised here, you know, but we could go back and say, well, yeah, Cole, your great grandpa stacked hay with mine, with Jake's great grandpa, you know. They were just down the.
That might be why they were so fast. They were working, guys. They were working.
Yeah. And you know, and you sit there and go, well, yeah, you know, this and it's fun to intertwine and get in that sense of community, because I think that is lacking in so much of this country today. Is it true? You have people living in big cities, but you don't have a community there.
Right. When they watch out for you, and that's what you get here. That's what I love about Southwest Nebraska. John, thanks for your time today. Do you have any closing remarks on our podcast?
No, I'm just glad to be a part of it and hope that we can help some people out.
Now, if somebody sees this, and we'll put it up there, what is the website, or what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I tell you, we don't have a website.
Okay.
We just do strictly, just look for John Odea on Facebook. We've got a customer group that's Odea Family Beef.
Okay.
And back to that scarcity in the marketplace, we hold our customer group. The reason we don't have a website is we don't want to cater to the tire kickers.
Perfect.
I mean, we've got dedicated customers, and we're dedicated to what we do. And
as a professional, I respect that, because he's giving his customers the VIP treatment and not the wholesale treatment.
Yeah. I want I'm a movie buff.
Okay.
And the big scene in 300, you know, they're standing there, and one fellow says, well, I brought 1,000 or whatever his number is.
Right.
He says, well, how many of them are professional soldiers? Well, he's a farmer, he's a painter, he does this. But says, I brought 300. I brought far more warriors than what you did. And so that's what we're going to take care of that, of our core group.
Yes.
I'm not feeding cattle to be in the beef business. I'm in the beef business to help them feed cattle.
Right.
And so we want to take care of the people in our small communities, and we're never going to be high V. We've got no desire to be high V. We're never going to be Tyson. We're going to do what we can with what we got, where we are, for who we love.
That's the American way, and that's the way to get. I asked about how to get hold of John. I see him on Facebook. We'll tag this. You're probably already following him. If you're not, John is a big trendsetter in the agriculture industry and vocal on helping the small producers. So go to his page, follow it. And I'm grateful that he came in and took time out of his busy schedule. And it's fun to sit with John, a true entrepreneur, and I appreciate your time.
All right, thanks, Darren.
Yeah. Thanks for watching Winners Win. If you're enjoying it, like it, share it, tell your friends. If you have a product or service you'd like for us to showcase, please reach out to us at winnerswin.net. We'd love to come to your place of business or your farm and do a showcase on you.